Good morning, YouTube fans. Yes, you see it right here. The national debt currently is at $23 trillion. But there's more, folks. We're going to give a breakdown of this chart because it's very important that we have to understand what we're looking at here. This is the debt overall. This is your version of it, or your portion of it, per citizen. Now that says citizen right there. It doesn't say, but here's the problem, per taxpayer. That's the problem. See, not a lot of people pay taxes. So everybody, they're counting everybody here. But there's the amount of money you yourself, if you're a taxpayer, has to pony up. Now the problem is you don't have the ability to pay that. I don't think you're just going to sit down and write a check. Now the U.S. federal spending is $4 trillion. The U.S. federal deficit, and then you come down to this actual spending and the actual deficit. Now, if you want to look a little bit further into history, here was the total debt to GDP. I was just a few years old. Notice how it is at 52%. But see, here it went down. And then guess what, folks? From 1980, it went. Now we have to look here from 1960 to 1980 to know what was going on. Now, space race, Vietnam, Cold War, just in that amount of time. A few years later, the Cold War ended, and then guess what? 2000. Then we had Gulf War I, II, Afghanistan, and now we're at 106%. The federal debt is compared to the gross domestic product. Now down here we'll also see a different change. Now this is where it gets rather interesting. If you notice, the U.S. federal budget deficit / surplus to GDP, we had a surplus in 2000. Who was president back then? Then we have it go down. So we're not doing anything to make it any better. Now let's go take a look at the U.S. federal income tax revenue over here. Now this is what we bring in every year in taxes. So on what it's saying here is this is the U.S. federal tax income by taxing you. Now the revenue per citizen, again, these people may not be paying taxes. They're spending their money. Your income tax, what you pay if you work in a job locally, but what is the federal part of it? That's pretty bad. You're being taxed. And of course, then we have the chart. What I'd like you to do is go to the U.S. debt clock and follow along with me and see if you could find any kind of rhyme or reason here. And none of this looks any good. You see a lot of green here, but notice what the debt was. Now these states, this is your local municipality. You see in here, each state is $1 trillion in debt. And then guess what, folks? You got to cough up some money for that. And then your local, these are your municipalities and your other places where New York, Chicago, Detroit. Our little town here doesn't have anything like this, but it's still pretty daggone high. I don't know about you, but these numbers kind of worry me a lot. Now this is a section that is really interesting because it breaks it down. U.S. population as of the last census is 330 million people. Half of those folks are in the workforce. The unemployment rate. And in some of these places, again, if you can follow along from left to right, these numbers are interesting because it starts to give you an idea of where all that money's going and what part of the demographics, like down here, okay, for instance, U.S. bankruptcies, that's on the rise, okay? We have to look at all these different areas and start to put together where all your money's going. Down here with the Medicare enrollees, that's not a lot of people, but look at the enrollees and who's getting it. Now this is when it kills you. It shows recipients outnumber enrollees, so I don't understand that part, but that's that number there I want to get clarification on. People living in poverty that have and have not insurance. 10 million people. And of course Obamacare was supposed to take care of that, but we saw what happened there. Here's another one. They even list millionaires, but yet they'll show recipients of food stamps. The wealth of the top 1%. It's amazing when you sit down and look at this that you're going to say, how many people are homeless in America? How many people die a year? Oh my goodness. Let's take a look at another chart. Now this is a section of it for the debt and what we pay in interest. Now we have a $23 trillion debt, but we're paying $3 trillion in interest. Folks, there's going to be a place in time where the debt interest payment will be more than what we spend on any program in the U.S. budget. Then we start looking at how we can probably pay off this loan, pay off this debt, is by our assets. Now the federal government, U.S. central banks, now these central banks really aren't your money, it's just where it's at. Now these trade deficits, these could go down a whole lot if everybody just started doing fair. Oh my goodness. Now when we talk about the assets of Americans, let's take a look at small business, 13 trillion. Corporate, 18. Our assets, you, me, and everybody else, 117 trillion. Total U.S. national assets, 149. Now, who are you going to sell it to? And when the dollar crashes, that worth is not there. This all just goes right away, because if nobody has any money, because your economy has completely gone away, all these numbers become nullified. The money that these properties are worth at the time of the crash is zero, because nobody can buy it. The dollar has no value, therefore these assets have no value unless you convert it to gold. And this last chart would be opening up for a lot of people, because these are liabilities that are mandated by Congress that have to be given out. $20 trillion in liabilities, $31 trillion in Medicare liabilities. U.S. unfunded liabilities total $127 trillion. Now there's your liability, folks. Who do you think is going to pay this off? Any suggestions? I haven't got a clue. But I know one thing. The crows will be roosting soon, and we're going to be in a whole lot of trouble.